This is Photoshop from the ground up. I'm photographer and designer Peter Law. What we're going to do in this episode is we're going to look at how to save our files now that we've actually changed them. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to make sure that we are not saving over our original documents. If you've brought in your stuff from your camera and you bring it open it into Photoshop and you want to work on it, you don't want to just press Command S or Control S to save it, because that's going to save over your original. And you always want to be able to go back and start over if you've messed something up, or for whatever reason you just don't want to do that. So you want to save a copy. So either make a copy first and then just start saving, or you can do your changes, and we're going to come up here to the file menu, and I am going to choose Save As right here. That's Shift Command S on a Mac or Shift Control S on the PC. And if I change the name or the location of a file, then it will save it as a different copy, or if I change the file format. Now, I can click on Save as a Copy, and all that does is actually just add copy to the name. And as I said, if you change the name, you save a copy. So we save what we say we want to call it. So we'll call this CP Smaller. And I'm going to choose the location where I want to save it. In this case, I'm just going to save to my desktop, and then the file format. Now, we've got loads and loads of file formats here. And JPEG is the most common one, and a JPEG has the added advantage of being very small in terms of the amount of hard drive space that it takes up compared to other file formats. And it's universally recognized. Anything that can read a picture will read JPEG. It does have some limitations. It doesn't support transparency, so if you want to see through the background, or if you want to use channels or layers or those sorts of things that we'll get to later in the course, it doesn't support those. So this is a great file format for just kind of basic imaging. Now it's compressed, so if you are the kind of person who likes to save all the time, I just made another change, I want to save, got to do that again, the way that you would say in a word processing program, this can cause you some problems, because every time you modify and save a JPEG, it's recompressing the file, which degrades it a little bit, sort of the way that making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of something would generally tend to make it less viable. So what you're going to want to do is save perhaps in a different format and then output to JPEG at the end. Photoshop's native file format is the Photoshop document, which has the extension .psd at the end of the files. This is great because it supports all of Photoshop's features. The big downside is that nothing else really can read it, and that it's a big file. So it'll take up a lot of room on your hard drive. Also, we have TIFF. And TIFF is a very similar file format in the sense that it supports layers and channels and that sort of thing, but it's more universally recognized. Now, TIFF files are very large. If you have, say, a 6 megapixel camera, a TIFF file of your image is going to be about 18 megabytes. So you actually multiply your megapixels by 3, and that's how many megabytes, more or less, that a TIFF file will have. There is compression available on a TIFF, but it's lossless compression, so it means that it doesn't actually cost you any quality in your image, but it really doesn't do much. Maybe you'll save 5% on the size of the image, so it's sort of something that's not really worth even doing. You can save as PDFs, which you could open in Adobe Reader or Acrobat or something like that. You can save as PNGs and GIFs and all that sort of stuff, but for the most part, you're going to save stuff as JPEGs, TIFFs, or Photoshop documents. So if I'm going to save in a JPEG, I'm going to click here in JPEG, and we'll hit Save. And what's going to happen is it's going to bring up this dialog box here. And the only thing you really need to worry about is this slider right here. So right here, it's going to calculate roughly how big it is. So this particular size, this JPEG at maximum quality, it's out of 12, not 10 for whatever reason, is 171 kilobytes. If I bump it down to, say, 11, it's 124. 10, I'm at 92. So I've already, saved us a fair bit without a big cost. If I move this all the way down to 0, you can't actually see the effects on the image. So I'm looking at this image, and it might not show up when this thing gets brought down to video, but you can open up an image inside of Photoshop and try this yourself. You're going to see that this is now only 36 kilobytes, but it's looking really awful. So you'll want to balance where you want to do this. I personally leave everything at 12, unless I have a reason not to. Like if I need to email a file and so I can reduce the file down. But if I'm storing it on my hard drive, I want to keep the best possible quality. So I'm going to leave this set to 12. Now, these, it's just a shorthand way of picking a quality setting. So you don't actually have to worry about this pull down menu. I'll just move that up to 12 and then leave it. And I wouldn't worry about your format options. That really doesn't have much of an effect. So I'm going to cancel out of that though. And I'm going to hit the Save As command dialog box again. That's Command-Shift-S or Control-Shift-S on the PC. And I'm going to go and I'm going to pick the TIFF. And I'll just click Save. And here you go, have all this stuff here. Okay, image compression. As I said before, the file size, you don't get much bang for your buck when you use the compression in TIFFs. So I'm just going to leave that to none because sometimes some programs don't like to read compressed TIFFs. The pixel order, I wouldn't worry too much about that. And the byte order, the IBM or the Macintosh, it's fine. You can still, this is set to Macintosh, and you can still open this on a PC. And if you save it as a PC, you can still open it on Macintosh. So don't get too worried about that. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of that. And again, Image, Save As, and I'm going to choose the Photoshop document here. I'm going to click Save. And the only thing that I'm going to get is I'm usually, although in this case I didn't, I think I have that turned off, you might get a checkbox that says, do you want to preserve compatibility? And you can leave that check mark on, and that's just going to allow you to use that, particularly in other Adobe programs, like if you want to bring it into InDesign or something like that. More or less, it's a good idea to leave that checkbox checked on, but it is going to make your file a little bit bigger. So these are the major file formats that you're going to use inside of Photoshop and how you would go about saving them. Just a reminder to always save copies of your images when you've been working on them instead of saving over your originals. Try to always make sure that you've got your original picture in pristine, untouched condition from your camera.